I also am happy to be on the panel with these respected witnesses, especially Mr. Pickens. I, without his permission, talked about you on the Senate floor today. I said that the great American entrepreneur Boone Pickens knows a lot of things, but one is how to make money. And if he's interested in renewable energy, we all better start taking a look at it.
Thank you.
I also say to you, Mr. Pickens, that for many years, one of your biggest cheerleaders has been Michelle Laxalt, who is, of course, from Nevada and my longtime friend. So glad to be on the panel with you.
Thank you.
We'll have a 5-minute round of questions here. Mr. Pickens, one of the points that Senator Reid made is that a significant amount of the progress that has been made in promoting renewables has been because of renewable portfolio standards that have been adopted in 25 states. We've tried to adopt a national renewable portfolio standard, have not been successful. What's your view as to the utility of us doing that? Is that something we ought to continue to pursue, or does it make a big difference?
Let me go back to what I consider the problem that I'm trying to attack, and that is that we are paying for $700 billion worth of imported oil. So I then look at what is available to us in this country to, in some way, offset that. And if you go down the list of resources we have available, we have oil, which is in decline. We have coal, we have natural gas, we have wind, we have solar, we have hydro, we have biofuels, nuclear. We've got to look at everything. We've got to look at everything. The renewables, it's time for the renewables. The wind is located in the right place. If I could ask one of my guys to put a map up, show me the one that the DOE had. This is a great illustration. This is a DOE map that was done in April of '07, but it shows the wind corridor, that being right up through the central part of the United States. It's in a perfect place, one, to have safety as to where the location is. It's perfect as far as the people in that area. They want it. They want the wind. It's not like on the coast where you have problems there siting those turbines. But here they want it. It could happen. And I think the Department of Energy did an excellent job of identifying the resource and then also the transmission out of there. I know you asked me the question about the renewables. The renewables, it's time for the renewables. If you look at my second, again, Department of Energy map, I look like I don't have any displays here, but I do have some too. But anyway, get the one on the solar. Here we're very, very close to doing something on solar. And you can see here again across the southwest part of the United States is the solar corridor. And this could be put, solar and wind do extremely well together in mixing them. But what we need is leadership to come forward and develop these resources for us, because we are so close now to having them and in quantities that would substantially reduce the $700 billion that we're buying foreign crude oil with. We've got to get that stopped.
In your testimony there, you talked about how we needed to release natural gas out of power generation, so that we take what we're currently using in power generation and shift that to the transportation sector. Are there, in addition to the renewable portfolio standard that we've been talking about, are there other actions you think the federal government should take to try to ensure that transition of natural gas from power generation to transportation occurs, or will the market just bring that about? How do you see that occurring right now? I think the utilities have generated more and more power from natural gas because that has been the cheapest way to generate additional power. And I don't know if if the wind generation you're talking about is going to be a more attractive option for them, or if we need to have policies in place that cause that shift to occur.
Well, as we all know in this country, that it's going to go to the cheapest, source of power. That's the system that we all operate under. So it's got to go. Wind will be cheaper than anything else. Solar will also, not yet. I'm not saying we're there yet. We are on wind. We're not on solar. But the natural gas will move out of the power generation slowly. I can see that it moves out and is very conveniently replaced over a period of 5 to 10 years. So I don't know that I have any recommendations to you on this, other than let it happen, encourage it to happen, and I think you've got to have a PTC to make it work. You want it to go as quick as you can, because you want to reduce the 700 billion number. So PTC on our evaluation was 200,000 megawatts. The PTC for that would be $15 billion a year to accomplish that. You need to give it for a long enough time that planning can happen. Another point that I'm not sure, and this was brought up in a meeting last night, that we don't have the manufacturing for the wind, and it's GE is big in the business, and we have a few other smaller ones. But if we have a PTC that shows the wind manufacturing turbine people, they'll come into the country. And that'll bring down the cost. When they come in, there'll be more competition, and we'll bring down the cost there. But when you look at $15 billion a year, it's insignificant compared to the $700 billion that's going out for foreign oil.
About uncertainty in the market. Now, people in this room know that a lot of your success comes from seeing more clearly through that uncertainty than others have been able to do. When you look at this, when you look at the issues of the cost of construction and siting and access to corridors, is one of those a bigger burden that you see than the other? Is it the cost of the construction? Is it the siting and getting the permission to get through? What are you dealing with?
The biggest hurdle, of course, is to get access to the corridors. And somehow, I'm not sure how well versed I am on this response, but if we could go the route that Eisenhower used with the interstate highway system, I think the issue is so critical. I think we are in an emergency, and I think the outflow of I keep saying this, but I want to, though, but $700 billion a year, we can't afford that. We're going to be brought to our knees if this continues. And there's no reason to believe that the people with the oil are going to bring the price down. I mean, if we reverse positions and you and I are sitting on the table with the oil and they don't have the oil, we're going to want to sell the oil for the best price we can get for it. I mean, that's just human nature. And they do have a finite resource, and they do not have as much oil as they tell us they do. It isn't there. And I do believe in peak oil, and I believe that you have peaked out at 85 million barrels a day globally. Now, we're using 21 million barrels of the 85 million and producing about 7 of the 21. So if I could take just a minute on this point, the demand is about 86.4 million barrels a day. And when the demand is greater than the supply, the price has to go up until it kills demand. And that's where we are. That's what we're dealing with. Well, we're killing demand in the United States. We've killed 500,000 barrels a day of demand in the last year. But the Chinese have picked it up, is what's happened. And we are in a global situation, is what's happened to us. And, you know, when we say our truckers in this country, and I met with the Swift Trucking Company out in Phoenix 2 weeks ago, and they said, what's in store for us? And I said, you're going to pay more for diesel. So what's going to happen? It takes 4 barrels of oil to make 1 barrel of diesel. And that is becoming more and more expensive. Now, I know you're thinking, does he mean you can get 1 barrel of diesel and throw away the other 3 barrels? No, that isn't what happened, because it comes out of other products. But diesel is becoming more and more expensive around the world. You look at those truckers over there in France and Turkey, and they're parking their trucks, and they're frustrated, and, they're saying we've got to have cheaper fuel. They do if they're going to make money at the rates they're charging, so the price is either going to go up, or I don't think they're going to get any cheaper fuel is what's going to happen. So we've got to take care of ourselves, and I think if you can open up those corridors for transmission and for renewables, I see the corridors as being for renewables, and I think that's very healthy and for the country.
Thank you.
I wonder if, in your vision in terms of transmission generation by wind, how much investment is needed, and do you think that private capital is available for this transmission? I ask that question because I think the difference, as I understand it, between your bill and Senator Reid's is you're talking about private capital investing in the transmission. I think he's talking about public investment in that transmission.
Let me give you a number, and I'm going to check it and come back to you on it. Okay. For the 200,000 megawatts that I had our guys look at it and say, my question was the same as yours. What's this going to cost to move 200,000 megawatts wherever it's going to go? And I believe the number was $70 billion. And all the numbers that we keep coming up with are so minuscule compared to what we're paying for foreign oil that it almost, when you think about it, you step back and look at it and you think this is a bargain. This is an absolute bargain when you look at that map with all of the resource we have of the renewable there, and all we have to do is to transport it, give a PTC, and then transport it. I start to see it as a pretty simple solution to a huge, huge problem for this country.
But you do believe private capital is available to accomplish that?
I think private capital can do it if you have the PTC.
Okay.
I think you've got to have that. Yeah. I almost believe that it could work with private capital and no PTC, but it's going to be years and years to get to where you want to be. So it becomes cheap to get rid of the burden of the foreign oil.
Sure. In your vision for the future, would natural gas be used as an alternative fuel as it is now, or as a feedstock for fuel cell vehicles?
That's again is a unbelievable timing for this country. You almost start to think divine intervention, because here we are depleting our oil. We peaked in 1970 in the United States on oil, and we've been in decline since that time. If you look at natural gas is actually being you're replacing your production annually, and you're adding to the reserve base. And the reason for this is because we have 21 shale basins in the United States, and about, I think, 4 or 5 of them are under development. Now, this geologist, I would have never believed you could ever get gas out of shale, but you can. And that technology is so advanced now that there are tremendous reserves. I think you can probably, our reserves for this country is about 250 trillion cubic feet of gas. I think that probably will be doubled with the shale reserves. So we have the reserves now. Do we have it forever? No, you don't have it forever. And what I foresee will happen, if you could move today, this I think is worth mentioning, that I have tried to promote natural gas as a transportation fuel since 1988. It was cleaner, cheaper, and it was domestic. And when I tried to make that pitch, that the only thing that people heard when it came out was they didn't care whether it was cleaner, and they didn't care whether it was domestic. They just wanted it to be cheaper. It was cheaper, but it wasn't enough cheaper to pick up, and that happened. But what's happened around the world in the last 3 years, the increase in natural gas vehicles has gone from 5 million to 8 million. So there are 8 million vehicles around the world today. General Motors makes 19 platforms out of this country, but only one in this country, because the demand isn't here, not because there's anything wrong with GM. Okay, We only have 142,000 vehicles in the United States on natural gas.
Right.
We lag the world, and we have the natural gas. So it can happen, you know, very conveniently. And we still have plenty of gas for petrochemicals and other uses for natural gas.
And I want to emphasize the point that I think you were making, that if we're using natural gas just to make electricity, we're really wasting it. We're not using it as efficiently as you're suggesting.
That's hard for me to say it's wasting it. I'm not saying it's wasting it, because the industry has to sell their product. Once you make the investment, now you have a well, now we have to use it. And there's no question it's the cleanest of all for other than the renewables in power generation.
Do you think that the market system will move in this direction of its own will, or do you think it would be useful for the Congress, through a renewable electricity standard, to describe a goal?
I think you're going to have to do it. I don't think it's going to go that direction just because people want to do renewables. I think I'm answering the question you asked me, aren't I?
Right.
Okay. Again, what you'll do is you'll go back to the cheapest way to do it, is the way it'll be done. I mean, that's the system we live in.
But we affect the price by tax incentives, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And so if you can give some help, but I keep going back to this point. I don't think I made exactly this one, but almost. But the way we've operated here, as far as energy is concerned, the way our country has, it's almost like send us the oil, never mind the cost. And we just kept using more and more oil, and now we're up to 70%. We're in the trap. We are in a trap is where we are. We're caught in the trap. And when we've got to go to renewables, there's no question about it. But when you look at these studies by the DOE, clearly we have energy available to us. Why haven't we used it? We haven't used it. Now comes the leadership that causes that to happen.
Well, every addiction ends in a trap, and the question is there public policy that leads us out of this in a different direction? You're correct in my judgment that the market system moves to the cheapest form of energy.
It does.
But we also can have a significant impact about what energy, with respect to what is the price of energy. The price of a gallon of gas is not $4. It's probably about $10 if you factor in the cost of defense and other things that we're spending in the free world.
Right.
But we have an impact on what the price can be with respect to incentives. We put them in place a century ago for oil and gas. We can, in my judgment, send a much stronger signal for renewables than we've done.
I agree. I think you can send a stronger message on renewables, but we know we have it. Finding oil and gas is a tough deal. I know. I've been in that business for over 50 years, and I found a lot of oil and gas, but it's been expensive at times, very, very expensive. You can drill a lot of dry holes. I will say this: you won't have anybody before you this year that has drilled more dry holes than I have.
Mr. President, my time has expired, but I wanted to make one additional point. Wind and solar are both intermittent forms of energy, but there are ways to firm up an intermittent form of energy. And we have a project in North Dakota that I sponsored in which we're taking energy from the wind, producing electricity through electrolysis, separating hydrogen from water, and storing hydrogen for vehicle use. You can take an intermittent energy source and produce vehicle fuel in terms of hydrogen. So there's a lot of things we can do with wind, and it's not hard to find wind, at least in North Dakota.
That's right. You have one of the best resources of any place in the country.
Department of Energy says it's the Saudi Arabia of wind. We are number 1 in wind, and we're number 50 in trees. So there's nothing there to break the wind.
My ranch is in Panhandle of Texas, and I've lied about wind forever, that it doesn't blow as much as you all think it does. That's what I always say. And now I say, can you believe it? This wind is great. And so it's, just different times in your life.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pickens, there are a number of people, and I think you heard Senator Reid and myself and others up here, who see huge potential in sustainable energy if we can get our hands on and solve the transmission problem. So let me start off by asking you, if we got our act together, you talked about wind in the Midwest, Senator Reid talked about solar thermal in the Southwest. what percentage of electricity in this country could be generated by sustainable energy? I think the folks from the Western Governors Association were talking about 17% within the reasonable future coming from solar thermal in the western part of this country. What do you think?
Okay, if you look at that map right across the top, it says that 20%. Now, that's from the DOE, and we do not disagree with that number.
By when? 20% by when?
That's right. That's what it says across the top there.
20% by 2020?
No, they say 2030, but I think you can beat that.
Okay.
Where we differ with them is how quick it could be accomplished. And if you called it an emergency, which I believe it is that, I think you could do the 20% in less than 10 years.
Huh.
But you've got to do it quick because you have so much outflow of money.
Right. You, I know, have been focusing on wind. What do you see the potential of solar?
I'm not an authority. I'm pretty good on wind. I'm not that good on solar. I'm real good on oil and gas. But let me tell you that some people really, for me to go to renewables, a geologist who's been in oil and gas his whole life, they're somewhat surprised and astounded but this is where we have to go. But quick answer on solar, it's there. There's no question it's there. Now, it's not as cheap, and those things are going to happen. If you'll give the incentives and tell them this is the direction we want. Just look what the president did for ethanol. The president came out for ethanol, and I mean ethanol happened. It went, and it probably was not the best idea I've ever seen, but anyway, it's a...
All right, let me ask you this. Obviously, we are dealing now with two international crises, that is global warming and the high price of fuel. In terms of wind, which you do know a lot about, how cost competitive is it today with other sources of energy?
The wind is it's competitive. I think that the wind is. I'm going to stick my neck out here, but I believe it. When you take coal and bring it up to clean it up and everything else, I think that wind is competitive with coal.
So today, not in the future. What you're saying?
I'm saying today.
Today. This is an extraordinary statement that he's saying today wind is cost competitive or maybe cheaper than coal. Is that what you're saying? I'm
saying that, yes.
Well, that's it. Let me ask you another thing. You know a little bit about oil, right?
About what?
Oil. You've heard of oil.
I'm ready.
All right. Now, it is interesting. Many of our friends, I was on 2 television shows the other day, and kind of conservative commentators were saying, the solution is drill, drill, drill. We're going to solve all of our problems if we just drill for all the oil that is in the United States. And I heard you mention several times ago you believe in peak oil. Are we capable of drilling our way out of this crisis?
Well, let me take a little history. But we peaked in the United States at 10 million barrels a day in 1970. We're now producing 5 million barrels a day. Could we have kept that at 10? There's no way that we had the resources to do that. An average oil well in the United States is 5 barrels a day. An average oil well in Saudi Arabia is 5,000 barrels a day. The Saudis are lifting 6 barrels of water with every barrel of oil, which tells me they're mature. That's mature. The Russians are lifting 9 barrels of water with every barrel of oil. We're lifting over 100 barrels of water with every barrel of oil. So we are mature. Now, could we drill our way out of it? No, there's no way you can do that. I don't agree with the USGS that there's 86 billion barrels of oil off the east and west coast of the United States. Those guys work on that a lot more than I do, so I'm not going to say it's a ridiculous number. I just don't agree with it. When I look at ANWR, I would look at ANWR and feel like it may be time. I laughed about it last night at dinner. I said if I was one of the senators that voted against ANWR, I would almost see the American people today, it is shifting, and the American people are wanting to do something, and they don't know for sure what it is, but they're voting for ANWR. I saw a poll the other day, 57%. And I said, I almost think if I was one of those senators that voted against it, I'd say, you know, back there when those Republicans were trying to get me to do ANWR at $20 a barrel, it was too cheap. But now at $120 a barrel, I may be more interested in doing it. So maybe we're coming around to a point where the value of the oil at Anwar. And I'm not one that believes there's 16 billion barrels at Anwar either. There was 14 billion at Prudhoe Bay, which is the largest field we ever had in the United States. But Anwar does not have the same sediments because you cross a fault going east of Prudhoe Bay. See, I know this subject.